Chapter 20. The smug assurance of Brute Redford's determined expression was evidence enough that he would raise to the bait of Stephen's left-handed challenge to his abilities. He waved Fraser and Sam towards the Bonanza House door, pausing to stare bleakly out at the angry crowd from his top step. "Go your way, if that's the way you want her," he bellowed with lungs of brass. "We'll have this out here and now." The response was a roar which drowned him out and caused him to head in with a haste for the door. He made it, elbowing Pat at the same time, and together they jammed the door shut and forced the bar home, while men banged fiercely on the panels outside. "What's all this, Redford?" A whining voice spoke from behind them, and the skinny, rat-eyed proprietor hurried up. One of the breed that had been playing along with Brute when the going was good. He knew how the wind had shifted and did not so much as attempt to conceal his dismay. "The boys are out of hand and we're fortin' up," Redford rumbled flatly. "If you don't like her, Barden, get out while there's time." Unable to face down this blunt talk, the rattled hotelman stormed away muttering. He and his meagre staff must have taken the outlaw's advice speedily to heart, for they faded from sight and were not seen again. "There's 3 or 4 doors to this place," Buck Fraser exclaimed, gazing about the interior doubtfully. "Block 'em up," retorted Redford instantly. "Look alive, boys, they'll be on us in short order." They set to work hurriedly, running around the ground floor, and once blockaded, the hotel appeared reasonably impenetrable against anything less than a direct frontal attack. Pat yet hoped to avert, or at least stall off an out-and-out gunplay, and his purpose being to maneuver for time. But while he was securing the door at the bar, a shot racketed out at the back when Fraser had disappeared. It was heard, and the aroused miners yelled their fury, crowding up on the porch as if they would crash the windows and bust in. Pat froze, listening and alert. Suddenly a slug came tearing through the door, and heavy blows crashed against it. Drawing his gun, he delayed a moment to call over his shoulder. "Spain, take Dell upstairs," he ordered urgently, "and stay away from the windows." Hearing the clatter of heels on the step, he deliberately fired through the door, aiming low. This he followed with a second and third shot, angling to cover a wide area outside. The response was an instant stamping of boots as the crowd rushed to clear the porch. Pat moved back to the office, and Redford was in there with Sam. "That seemed to scatter 'em, Stevens." Brute nodded his satisfaction toward the shuttered window. "They're still ganging up out there, though." Hard on the moment, deadened gunfire thudded from somewhere upstairs, and Sloane sprang to the window and peered out. "Spain did it," he yelped. "He's letting them have her from the upstairs, and they're running like sheep." Pat shook his head soberly. "They'll run now, but this means a siege, with darkness less than an hour off." He was right. Already one of the gaudy sunsets common to the mountain heights was building up in the west. Late afternoon shadow had claimed Big Medicine, which would thicken steadily into night. A lull fell, affording them time in which to check the weakening of their position. These were few enough, and the log hotel had been stoutly constructed. After 10 minutes, Ches Denton appeared to get his tech organized. A rifling, whistling slug sailed in through a downstairs window, shattering it, and a second later another window jarred into fragments. After that a deadly and methodical fire continued, till virtually every window in the place was gone. And still the steady fire poured in, searching every corner it could reach. "They got us surrounded," Sloane exclaimed, firing out over a sill, crawling on hands and knees towards another one. He swore feverishly as he cut his knee on a loose piece of glass. "They're aiming to cut us to a sieve one at a time." "There ain't a chance of getting out of here," Fraser called back through the hall towards them. "We're going to die like rats." "Well, you should have thought of that before you bet on the wrong horse, Fraser," Sam retorted with a humor. "Somebody be left to tell the boys you died nice." Fraser started to curse. "Can it, Buck?" Redford silenced him with curt authority. Dusk thickened steadily, with no slacking in gunfire from outside. As full dark came on, the attackers grew bolder, coming out of concealment and advancing under cover of the gloom. "Give it up, Redford!" Denton's mocking tone came in through the window from no great distance. "We got you cornered. You'll never make this grade this time." "Come and get me, Denton!" defied Brute instantly, raking the dark with slugs. Denton's taunt laugh floated back. A moment later, a stir in the pitch-dark hallway whirled Pat and Redford about. "Who's that?" rifled the outlaw. "Brute, it's gosh awful dark out there." It was Buck Fraser's half-whining voice. "Maybe we could sneak away and never be spotted." Redford cursed him roundly. "Get back to those rear windows and don't you be leaving them again," he commanded sternly. Others beside Buck were bothered by the impenetrable mountain darkness. Presently a bonfire flickered into light out in the plaza, throwing a wavering glow on the besieged hotel. Another appeared, and later still a third dispelled a heavy gloom in the rear of the hotel, and Redford chuckled grimly. "Denton's a mind reader," he growled to Pat. "He ain't trusting us to stay put. Fraser, anyway. The damn fool hasn't got it figured out that them fires help us more'n they help his crowd." Pat could not help noting the man's rocky stoicism now that he could found time and opportunity for thought. Defense consisted chiefly of prowling watchful from window to window and throwing an occasional slug at some fleeting figure that was outside. Stealing upstairs, Pat found Spain busily engaged in a like activity, with Della pluckily abating him. "Oh, you startled me, Pat. You're not hurt, are you?" she exclaimed anxiously. He reassured her with an offhand remark. "Just see to it that Roy don't get a bad scratch," he admonished lightly. She stared at him in the faint flickering glow from without. "I declare that you're enjoying every bit of this," she got out with pretended indignation. "Will it never end, Pat?" In truth, the long minutes seemed to drag by, but Pat knew that in reality they were flying. Nothing ever caused the clock to race so swiftly as dread of uncertainty. He could only hope the stalemate would endure long enough to serve his purpose. One determined rush by the attackers might end everything. That it had not already come was due, at least in part, to Brute Redford's dark report. Pat shook his head at the thoughts. Strange that the emotionless outlaw's very formidability should contribute to his inevitable downfall. A burst of rapid firing from down there drew Pat down the stairs in a haste, and he found Fraser crouching, subdued and shaky in a hasted gun smoke. "They were coming at me hard, Stevens," the man said nervously, "but I drove 'em off." Peering curiously out into the darkness, Pat could note nothing of suspicious nature. He moved on, completing his restless rounds to pause at Redford's side. "What would you do, Redford, if they were to storm in here and grab us?" he murmured curiously. "Spit in their teeth, the darn dogs." Brute almost spat now unyieldingly. Pat controlled a shiver of intense distaste. The man was scarcely human. Time rolled on. "Daylight's coming," Sam muttered, indicating the murky east. Pat was staring in disbelief when a sudden outbreak in the rear of the place yanked him around. Shots crashed thunderously and a yell rang out. He was not surprised, having long since anticipated trouble from Fraser's direction. And when he sprang towards the hall and burst through, a gun stabbed in the dark with an orange flash almost in his face. Dropping, Pat read treachery as it ripened. Buck had yanked the back door wide open. "Come on in, boys!" he yelled. "I'm washed up with the deal. This is your chance to break it up." Boots stamped back there, and heads loomed in the opening. Whipping his gun up, Pat fired a shot that went high. A perfect fusillade answered, and he saw Fraser stiffen and crash down, felled by a wild slug. Again Pat fired, rolled against the wall. Feet thudded as Spain rushed downstairs, and bitter gunfire rocked the lower room, and Redford slammed the front door open and shrewdly prepared for a strategic retreat. In that moment, a pounding clatter of hard-driven horses swelled outside in the shadowy plaza, guns slamming flatly, and Pat heard a man yell. "Who's that out there?" barked Sloan. "It's Ezra, with the posse I sent him to Avalanche for," called Pat. "One way or another, Sam. This tears it." He sprang through the open door. "Ezra, this way!" he cried, piercing. Ezra thrust his horse to the porch's edge at the head of some 20 heavily armed men. The mining camp roughs had already spotted them and were scattering like quail. "I was afraid someone would miss you and get wise," Pat called to the lanky redhead. "But I managed to hold Redford here. He's inside." As he started to turn, a menacing shadow loomed behind him. Redford, the smooth mask of his impassive features, cracked at last and rushed at him wildly, gun raised to club him down. "Blast your gall, Stevens!" the outlaw blared in a rage. "You'll go with me!" There was no time to which to dodge. As it turned out, Pat didn't have to. Sam's gun cracked at his hip behind the plunging outlaw, and Redford abruptly broke stride, swaying as a man struck by an invisible lightning, and smashed down, his Colt flying. It froze them all in an instant with its unexpectedness, and Pat broke from his immobility to whirl about towards the posseman. "Spread out, boys, and comb the camp," he whipped out. "There's still a few of those black legs left to grab." He went with them, grinning as he saw Spain starting to spur purposely across the plaza with several men at his heels. 5 minutes later, Roy reappeared, his companions dragging an extremely reluctant captive along with them. "I got Denton," Roy called. "He was clawing through Vern Hunter's quarters looking for money, I expect. What'll it be, Stevens, a rope, or does he get time to talk?" It was a shrewdly put query. "I'll talk." Chest burst out in a sweat, all of his bold arrogance gone. "If Redford's finished, there's plenty to tell." Deputy U.S. Marshal Kimball surveyed them sternly. "Any man that was hooked up with Bruce Redford better talk this fine morning," he growled. "I'm considerably surprised at you, Denton, but I'll listen." A last flicker of caution appeared in Denton's ruthless eye. "I better start with him, then. What do you want to hear, Kimball? I'll tell you all I know." "How about you start at the beginning, Denton?" Pat Stevens interposed dryly. "Tell him how you wrote Della Fossonby a letter in Hunter's name that led her up here, and what for." The lawman turned his head to see Dell standing on the hotel porch. His face went flat. "There's a girl mixed up in this, huh? What's she have to do with Hunter and Redford?" Just told him. Eager to tell in hopes of saving his own neck, he explained how Brute Redford had gotten Della's father's name on some worthless mining certificates a year ago, and then, insisting on payment, had not only drained Fossonby's range of cattle driven north by Hunter, but had succeeded in claiming the Pitchstone Ranch itself, which he was still holding by the shrewd use of Squint Larkin as manager. Kimball showed disgruntled amazement. "Well, that was a pretty dirty, low, cold-blooded deal, Denton," he exclaimed condemningly. "Bad enough, Kimball, but only one of several," Pat put in coldly. "Redford, he was a big operator. His interests extended all over the Mountain West. No doubt his ownership of the express mine could be proved to be crooked as well." Kimball looked at Denton, who reluctantly nodded assent. "Where Brute made his first big mistake was trying to intimidate that spunky young girl out there, that Follonsbees' daughter. And yours, Pat caught him up short, wasn't trying to involve me. Doubtless with the idea of snagging my lazy mare ranch for Redford the same as the pitchstone. Kimball's gaze sharpened. How's that, Stevens? He broke his neck to get my name on a phony check down there in Powder Valley, explained Pat. That's what originally interested me in him personally. Later I recognized Redford's signature. He issued the check and that tipped the deal. Where does Hunter come in? Well, he and Denton and a number of others were all Redford's agents in these slick deals. Hunter even engineered a hold-up of his own stage line to double-cross Spain here. Roy and I saved a shipment of gold concentrate. It's buried in the rocks, and we'll pick it up on the way down. Spain was wise to this whole deal before any of us, Pat continued, giving credit where it was due. He followed Vern up here from Colorado and tried to persuade him to talk. Seems you did a bit better, though, Kimball remarked. By going to work on Redford, Pat smiled. But I was forced to finish Hunter off last night in self-defense. I heard about your stunt, the lawman nodded. Reckon I can square you an avalanche, Stevens, since you got results. They'll be happy down there to hear Big Medicine's getting a fresh start. Well, since we're talking business, Ezra barged into the talk. What about that ruckus there in Dutch Springs, Denton? Did you plug Chuck Grangner, or have we got to prove it on you? His tone demanded an answer. Chest's face registered dismay, but he had gone too far to draw back now. Yes, Ezra, I shot Grangner by accident, but he didn't die. Well, Sheriff Lawler will be interested all the same, the one-eyed man said. Reckon it can be demonstrated that you was behind the killing of Henry Mayer, too? As far as that goes, I imagine. Denton appeared to protest at this. It did him no good. At a gesture from Kimball, two possemen hauled him away, and Chess went dejectedly on his way to jail as a material witness, his ordeal by no means over. What can I tell Della, Kimball? Roy Spain demanded. Will she get her ranch back? Redford admitted it was theft, and Denton heard it, same as all of us. She certainly will, the marshal began, chuckling. Spain waited for no more, but hastened towards the Bonanza Hotel. Della's warm hazel eyes were upon him as he approached. What are they saying, Roy? She queried with anxiety. What are all those men doing out there? There's still a lot of hot talk out there, the young fellow told her. And Denton, he confessed to plenty, but I expect it's all over, and thank God it ends fortunately for you. His tone was husky, and he halted on the steps below hers, searching her face almost sadly. Tell me, she implored, struggling between fear and hope. You'll get the Pitchstone Ranch back, he assured her slowly, as if the words spelled certain doom for his own desires. You can thank Stevens for that, Dell. All that's left is for him to go down and throw Squint Larkin off the place. I'll certainly thank Pat, she retorted with glowing eyes, after I've thanked you, Roy. But I haven't done a thing, he protested weakly. Nothing? Her tone was gentle. When you believed in my cause after everyone deserted me? Nonsense! You've done everything, Roy. She was insistent now. Spain stared at her, meaning beginning to get through his confused thoughts. Della, he exclaimed, was startled. You can't mean... Surely you don't think because I got my ranch back I won't be needing you. Her flush deepened, but she went bravely on, meeting his eyes. Can't you answer that for yourself, Roy? The eagerness with which he climbed that last porch step, placing him on a level with her, seemed almost symbolic. Dell, are you telling me that that you'd marry me?"
"Well, why don't you ask and find out?" she responded.
It was characteristics of those hard-shelled frontiersmen to gather in the plaza that fine early summer morning that none of them appeared to take a special note of the two young people embracing each other on the hotel porch in full sight of all the world. Ezra winked openly at Pat Stevens, with no other crack evidence itself in his homely sobriety, but no further notice was taken of the incident as the posse prepared to ride back down the rugged Blackfoots with its prisoner, until Sam Salone found occasion for an aside to his broad-shouldered young friend. "Well, Stevens," he began with smug satisfaction, "you've been a lot of things in your time, young as you are. After you ride down to Boulder and introduce Mrs. Roy Spain to the lawyers, and throw that wolf-eyed Larkin off her ranch, you might as well be prepared to play uncle." Pat surveyed Sam's bristly face gravely. "Well, how's that, Sam?"
"Well, them two are sure going on a long honeymoon," the squat young fellow asserted. "Somebody will have to look after young Bobby Follonsbees while Ez and me are teaching him how to stick on the back of a horse, and I reckon that you're probably elected for the job."
End of chapter 20. End of Montana Maverick by Peter Field, read by Mr. Stuff and Such. We will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.